I am Richard Wayne Horton, Wayne with a Y. My book is called Divorce Noir, without the E, because divorce in French is masculine, and the qualifier is therefore has to be masculine. I returned to work in my 90s. Old boss wanted me back. Wife wasn't thrilled, but I went for a look-see. At the factory, jobs were piled up in dark corners against the bricks. I said to the boss, "You've expanded." "Yeah, we like it. It's dark. We're getting lights soon." Big machine sat on the concrete, black iron covered in black dust. I knew the machines. They knew me. "Where's my work table?" I put one in the other room, window right next to it. "Have you some light there?" "Give me 2 guys to move the piles, a forklift, water source, brushes." "No problem. I can't keep steady hours, can't lift." When I said that, I looked at the dim black shapes, the handles, the wires trailing. Curved metal feet bolted into the concrete. "We'll accommodate." "Yeah." I turned to go. He said, "We'll go out through the office. Everything else is blocked." I laughed. Of course. I already felt the heaviness as if I wore the machines as clothes. At supper, I told my wife, "Hell, I won't go back." Next morning, before dawn, I got in the car. Too many legs. It was hot and dusty out at the park where the picnicking family was having so much fun they could puke. Mikey ran up a hill and then back down, kicking dust all the way. He couldn't look at Mom. Her legs were bare. She fluffed a tablecloth over the hot cement picnic table. Dolores from next door brought a potato salad bowl to anchor it so it wouldn't go whipping across the field and end up in outer space. Her legs were bare too. Mom had brought the broom from the trailer. She jabbed around under the concrete table, but the dust instantly blew back in place. The men were hunched over the concrete grill, frowning, torturing a piece of meat, as smoke rose up past their heads. Woman legs walked right in front of Mikey's face. He tried not to breathe. Dolores looked over at the men and said, "I never have understood what they see in our bodies. There's nothing down there, just an ugly thing you have to keep washing when your time comes." "I know, well, it's their thing. They go where the thing tells them to. Then, when it's all over, which takes 5 seconds, they pound their chest like an ape." "Quiet now, she's here." Patsy grinned up at the women and said, "Mama, is Daddy a monkey?" Dad came over just then with a goofy smile on his face. He asked Dolores about her homeland south of the border. Mikey looked up the hill. There'd been a fence up there. Was that the border? He noticed Dad kept looking down at Dolores's legs. Over at the meet, Jim called, "Watch out there, cowboy." Patsy laughed and said, "Watch out, monkey daddy." Dad frowned like he'd got a kick in the face. He said, "What kind of note is that? Who taught her to say that?" Mom said, "I'm not saying anything." On the drive home, something was wrong with the rearview mirror. Dad worked at it, trying to adjust it. Mom said, "If you're going to bother me every night in bed, why Why do you need to go stick out your stuff at Dolores too? Dad was just having a hell of a time with that mirror, and he almost drove off the road. He was drunk and speeding too, multitasking. He hit the mirror with his fist, and now it was crooked and broke too. All Mom had to do was look at him. He jerked the car straight in the lane and said, "I'll get us home, God damn it, don't you worry about that. Don't have a mirror, don't have goddamn friends, but we'll get home." In the back seat, Mikey had his hands over his ears. If he'd dared to say anything, he might have said that the trouble was that there were too many legs. Granddaddy's rise in business. When he's fully in his dream and free to move about, the grandson thinks he'll go visit his granddaddy's old office in the little North Carolina town where he started out as a clerk in 1919. The granddaddy's told him that this first job, which he got after putting away his army uniform, improved his character and made him prompt and reliable. It's a tiny room with a wooden desk and a hard, straight-back chair, and it's in the middle of a town of the dead past with all the houses rotted and covered in moss down beneath the river of time. Young Granddaddy comes in and tells him to sit at the desk and straighten up his back. He plops down a pile of paperwork in front of his grandson. On the wall is a clock and a calendar with deadlines, all in 1919. The granddaddy says he'll let the grandson get away with it today, but when he comes to work tomorrow, shirt sleeves will not be allowed. The grandson will have to wear a suit. The grandson, who clearly has not learned his lessons in life, tells the granddaddy that the town is dead and the work is for nothing. The granddaddy says, "Oh, you'll be fired if you talk like that." The boy tells him, "I know this is a dream." To this, the granddaddy replies, "Now you understand what work is. Stick to it and you'll rise in business like I did." The grandson wakes up and jumps out of his bed for fear that the straight-backed young man with the tall hair and the fierce frown will catch him by the collar and require him to work a full 12-hour day. A short biography of Osmana, and it's about revenge criticism and how it can sometimes diminish and trap the critic rather than her intended victim. A short biography of Osmana by Valnice Andrade, daughter of the well-known magic realist writer Osmana Andrade, appeared in 1982. Friends of Osmana knew Valnice by her nickname, Nice, spelled Nice. In quotes, I will be obliged to refer to her as W.A. The mom's friends initially sought out Nice's book because of their love for the author, philanthropist, and spokeswoman for women's empowerment, but were sorry afterward. It seems that the daughter's main purpose in the cramped 160-page text was to correct misunderstandings that had been harbored about her, the daughter, by many of her mother's friends who had compared her to a kind of recluse spider in the shadows of the family mansion in Rio. How wronged, how neglected this daughter had been. But some revenge, she thought, might now be possible. In words rich with dowdy poison, Nice recalls the career of her once beautiful mother. Quote, Osmana Andrade began her fairy tale life in the early 1930s as a spoiled child prodigy who had a pet dog named Zeze. who wore a conical, or should I say, a comical hat and performed unbelievable tricks. Nisi is beside herself with scornful disbelief as she recounts these, quote, legends. W.A. Did she fly as well? She could have taken Zezé on firefly journeys, don't you think? This comment, like the first cough of a heavy smoker, triggers further observations. Nisi expands on the absurdity of Osmana's youthful affectations, which, she maintains, should have been quashed in earliest infancy. Instead, she complains with a sigh, the parents permitted Osmana to live a life impossibly lovely. W.A. Some forms of good fortune, and especially love, are hurtful when witnessed by those who are excluded. After developing this theme for several pages, the daughter resumes the story. At 14, Osmana travels to Paris, and there, as the skies of Europe darken and the rumbling of approaching tanks can be heard, she writes her first slender volume of poems in French, Le Vague Mauve, 1940. W.A. What, not a war poem? Or, oh, I get it. The invading tanks were painted mauve to protect them from poets. No? Here either reviewer will say, yes, the poets actually did have guns. For all I know, they still have them. My advice to my readers is, don't invade France. W.A. Fleeing involvement with reality, my mother now returned to Rio and married a handsome industrialist whose seaside mansion hosted the great Brazilian and Argentine writers of the 1940s. All, according to the columnists of the time, were in love with Osmana. Oh, spare me, even the Catamites? Not that I begrudged them their, what shall I call it? Readers are sure to be mystified by this abrupt revelation of the biographer's prejudice. Osmana was celebrated as an advocate of gay rights. Back to Nisi's biographical monograph, alas. W.A. A mute, ugly little daughter was born, knew the injustice of exclusion, and took her place in the shadows among her special friends, the spiders. She, or I should say I, gave them names, Fidelio, Darius. They suffered horrible deaths from time to time. Mom discovered their devotion to me and sent the maid with a broom. Osmana's first novels are full of magic and fantasy, but suddenly the father/husband dies, and the daughter, the poor daughter, 3 exclamation points, turns to clutch desperately at her evasive, famous mother. Osmana is undergoing an ecstasy of grief and is not available. W.A. I should have been the one turning out tearjerkers. Boo-hoo-hoo. See, wasn't that convincing? From Osmana's grief is born in the subsequent year her most popular novel, City of Tears. The nation reads and weeps. W.A. The reviewers were like puppies left in the rain. What a racket. Professor Thomas Garrison from the University of Texas invites Osmana to a guest professorship for the year 1954. W.A. Garrison, a painted bird of academia, came to perch on her branch. In his light gray suit, he sprawled in one of our rattan terrace chairs and talked till flecks of foam collected at the sides of his mouth. The tiresome flea certainly had much to say. Now suddenly Osmana is absent, gone to Texas. Months pass. Her biographer, insulted by the ringing silence of the deserted seaside villa, dares not open the letters from Austin, convinced that they contain descriptions of orgies at the faculty lounge, or at Garrison's office, or in the open spaces of his ranch, under an orange and green cowboy sky, surrounded by cactuses, who custodiate the outrage with dry smirks. W.A. Yes, he was a man who liked to pinch servant girls, or to pinch Osmana, who had become a servant to lust, to hot needs, but I digress. Time passes, as time always will, and the biographer learns one day that Osmana is actually back in Rio and has been there for some time. What a surprise! A slap in the face, really. Osmana smokes constantly now. She drives a sports car, accompanied by young men with swept-back hair. Journeying to the family mansion in Rio, the daughter finds that electric lights have been installed, in spite of the danger to the mid-19th century structure. The place is garish, unpleasantly bright, its dust disturbed by vacuum cleaners. Then, in 1967, a fire in Osmana's bedroom. Help, help! The biographer grows quite enthusiastic as she describes the effects of the fire on her mother's fabled beauty. She becomes at last her caretaker and can impose a happy ending on the story, a sensible life, free of cigarettes, rich foods, troublesome visitors, car rides, and the sun. All is fine until 1978, when Professor Garrison returns on the eve of his retirement, quote, to see his old flame. W.A. Get it? Flame? Fire? Ah, yes, but you will agree, won't you, that the searing heat my mother's soul had suffered so many years ago at the hands of this man, his restless hands, had marked her far more terribly than the conflagration of 1967, the result of misdirected, twisted wiring in the wall of her bedroom. Garrison, with hair completely white, sags visibly when he sees the thing trundled out of the sick room. Osmana, unaware of her hideous appearance, seems eager to see him. She might even be smiling, though it would be impossible to know for sure. W.A. What was this? A special treat for the foreign professor. A new manuscript. After so many years of silence, even I, her biographer, was baffled by this unexpected development. Garrison takes it before the biographer can get around the wheelchair and snatch it away. He begins reading excitedly. The pages turn. His smile is replaced by a look of perplexity. Is there nothing but these disconnected, smutty fantasies? Oh dear. The claw on the arm of the wheelchair shakes, the long nails producing a rattling sound in the room which smells of camphor. Behind the wheelchair, the biographer stands guard, her blank face turned toward Garrison. The final page. He looks up, almost weeping. I'll see what I can do. Afternote. As published after Garrison's retirement by Howling Dog Press in Iowa, the volume bore the euphemistic title, Water of the Serpent. Many passages, at the insistence of Osmana's closest friends, had been tactfully left in Portuguese. These friends, alerted to Osmana's plight after reading a short biography of Osmana, see above, rushed to her aid, appointing a professional nurse for Osmana and a security guard to attend to the inquiries of the daughter/biographer, who appeared at the door from time to time but was never admitted. Nisi later published a revised biography of her mother called House of the Black Widow. It was short, cramped, and furious. It maintained that Osmana was now hopelessly insane and that her house was filled with overturned furniture from her violent seizures. The author noted regretfully that the fad of magic realism was finished anyway. Osmana's books would all end up in a dumpster. What a shame. Water of the Serpent has gone through several print runs and has received an award for its portrayal of passion as a vibrant river with serpentine windings. Reading it in a quiet moment, a dark moment, Nisi finds that it is not impossible to shed a tear for her terminally insane mother after all. She turns to her typewriter. "I could be the serpent in your book, Mom. Unlike your false one, which swims in other people's tears, my tears are real. But what would you know of that? Like Sophia, I could have created all the tragic cosmoses you needed, and without the cheap whiskey of magic." She reaches beneath her desk, where her fingers encounter the neck of a by no means cheap bottle of cognac, crowned by a globular cork. "Don't be alarmed, Fenelon," she says to one of her numerous pendant pets who reside in the shadows beneath her desk. As a writer, I struggle with the impulse to name my writing style, but I ignore that impulse. Instead, I let my style change and adjust for each story or poem, because they're all different. They all have their own soul and their own voice. I'm Horton, but I'm not a Hortonist, and I hope that there don't come to be Hortonists in the U.S. My word pieces each make their own style. Some contain a little surrealism, a little cinematic hyperrealism, and a lot of mood if I can get it in there. Others respond to the personality of the narrator. They live with the narrator's internal life, which is expressed in how the narrator talks and what the narrator says or leaves out. One thing they all have in common is that I pull out any distracting clutter so that what remains can be bright and strong. One of my favorite movies is Once Upon a Time in the West. The images in that movie are colossal and loaded with drama. Like the lines in the movie, the speech in my stories is clear and plain, almost like pebbles that hit you in the face. But they're also loaded with emotion and consequence, and you can see the backstories from how the narrator is talking and what he's mentioning, he or she.